So you're looking for some dirt on South Surrey and White Rock. Well, you've come to the right place. If you're thinking about making a move out this way, chances are you've been doing your research and you found a lot of the pros, a lot of the great things about living here, but not so much the cons. That's often a lot more difficult to find. So in this video, I'm going to share with you 7 of the worst things about living in South Surrey and White Rock. Now, I've lived here in the South Surrey White Rock area for over 22 years, so I know a lot of the pros and cons. But instead of just giving you my personal opinion, what I decided to do for this video to research the cons was to go out and survey the public. So to do that, I went to our local Facebook group. The Facebook group has over 20,000 people. And when I posted the question, what are the worst things about living in South Surrey and White Rock? I got 338 responses. So again, in this video, I am going to go through the most common responses that I received and share those with you. And be sure to stay till the end, because the last con that I'm going to share with you is something that really just came about when COVID arrived. And now that COVID is on its way out, unfortunately, this con seems to be sticking around. And I have a feeling it's going to stick around for a long time to come. Hey, my name's Glen Hopkins. I am a local realtor here in the South Surrey White Rock area. And if you're thinking about making a move here, if you have any questions whatsoever, please feel free to reach out and connect with me. In the description box below, you're going to find a link where you can schedule a call. Also, while you're there, you're going to see links to my podcast and a couple of great downloads, such as my Informed Home Buyer's Guide and my Informed Home Seller's Guide. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the 7 worst things about living in the South Surrey White Rock area. And again, these cons are all based upon responses that I received from over 338 people in a Facebook post that I made. So number 1, and probably no surprise to you or anyone else, is the amount of rain that we get here. We get a tremendous amount of rain in South Surrey and White Rock, particularly during the winter months. So if you're not used to that, you want to get used to the idea of a constant rain or a drizzle all winter long. Now, the benefit, of course, of that is you don't have to shovel rain, and it's always green here. I mean, it's amazingly green year round. The second most common complaint or con of living in White Rock, and now this is specific to White Rock only, not South Surrey, because they are different municipalities, but White Rock, the complaint is the poor quality of drinking water, the water that comes out of your tap. Apparently, it does not taste so good, and some people will go so far as to say that it leaves calcification on your dishes, so over time, your glasses tend to turn pink. The third con about living in this area is overcrowding, namely overcrowding of schools and after-school activities. Unfortunately, our population is growing so fast that the schools simply can't keep up. And as a result, most of the schools have portables. These are portable buildings that they put out in the playgrounds. And kids, well, they have to go to class in those portables, which is, well, let's just say it's far from ideal. These portables, they don't have AC, and oftentimes they don't have windows, which means in the summer months, or as we get closer to the summer months, it can get pretty hot in those portables. As far as the activities go for kids, this can also be a potential issue. If you don't get on top of it, you need to sign up early, because spaces, well, they're very limited. And oftentimes, sadly, a lot of the kids just simply can't get into the program because of limited space. And the fourth common complaint that we see here in the area is housing. Housing is very expensive in South Surrey and White Rock, and it's constantly changing. So if you do have questions about that, again, I am a realtor, so feel free to reach out and connect with me. But let's just say housing is very expensive. And a lot of people will say that South Surrey and White Rock is starting to get overcrowded because, well, builders are doing their best to build as much as possible to keep up with the demand. And as a result, well, we're starting to see a lot of the green space being cleared, and nobody likes to lose the green space. And people are also saying that they don't really like the number of high-rise buildings that are starting to pop up throughout White Rock. The fifth complaint about living in this area is poor cell phone and radio reception. Now, again, this is more unique to White Rock itself, not so much South Surrey. In fact, I've never really heard of an issue in South Surrey. But in White Rock, we often have a challenge with cell phone reception, specifically as you get closer and closer to the U.S. border. Because don't forget, we are right on the U.S. border. So oftentimes you'll be driving in your car or visiting a friend, and suddenly you'll get a text message from your mobile carrier saying, "Welcome to the United States," and you're not in the United States. And, in the past, sometimes what would happen is people would get charged for roaming charges for being in the States when in fact they were not in the United States. Thankfully, that's getting better and better. We're not seeing that as much anymore, yet still there are some issues getting a good connection. Now, the other issue along those lines is getting a good radio reception. For those of you that still listen to the radio, and I'm guilty of it, if you're driving along, if you're in South Surrey and you come into the White Rock proper, specifically if you're driving along anywhere on the White Rock Bluff, chances are your radio station is going to turn to static. And that really sucks if you're listening to and singing along to a good song. And number 6 is noise. Yeah, believe it or not, a lot of people actually complained about the noise levels here in the White Rock area. Now, specifically what they were referring to is the noise on Marine Drive. So when you're driving down Marine along the water and where the promenade is, where all the cafes and the restaurants are, a lot of people like to sit out there, enjoy their dinner or their lunch, have a coffee or an ice cream, or perhaps they're strolling along the beach. Well, sadly, like many beach towns, people like to, drive their really loud motorcycles and loud souped up cars down the street and sometimes even blaring their radios. That can be annoying. The other thing that can be annoying as far as noise goes in the White Rock area is the train. The train actually goes right along the beachfront, the entire stretch of the beachfront, and guess what? It likes to blow its horn, and it is darn loud. So that's something you definitely need to get used to. But let's face it, I don't think I've ever been to a beach town where people aren't driving up and down the main strip with their windows down, listening to music and revving their engine. But in reality, South Surrey and White Rock are very, very quiet towns. We don't have any nightlife. We don't have any stadiums or events going on. So it's really very quiet. It tends to go to sleep early. In fact, the only thing that I can think of that's up late at night is Canada Day. And the Canada Day when we do our fireworks. Generally, that's over by about 11 o'clock. After that, you're not going to hear crickets. All right, so we are on number 7, and this is a big one. And after number 7, I'm going to share with you sort of a bonus, if you will, an issue that's cropped up since COVID. As our town gets more and more developed, we're getting, more and more traffic, and traffic creates congestion. Generally speaking, the rush hour around here is school hours. So when school is just getting started and when school is out. So let's say anytime between 2:30 and 4 o'clock in the afternoon is the rush hour. Why? Well, it's a really interesting thing, but it seems that every single kid in South Surrey and White Rock gets privately and personally chauffeured by their parent to the school, to and from the school. That creates a lot of congestion. The days of a school bus seem to be something of the past. I still see them, don't get me wrong, but man, a lot of kids get personally chauffeured to school. So as a result, any of the streets in and around a school, they're going to be very busy during the bell times. Also, a lot of people get off a little bit earlier here. So somewhere in and around that 4 o'clock time, things get pretty hectic in certain areas of town, namely Grandview. Grandview is up on 24th Avenue and 160th. In and around that area gets very, very busy. It's heavily congested because, they've done a lot of development. A lot of the stores in town are up on Grandview, and also they've done a lot of building as far as condos and townhouses go. Now, when we talk about transportation, if you don't want to be in a car, you do have the option of a cab or a bus, but there's not a lot of buses and there's not a SkyTrain either. So we have limited public transportation. Oh, and if you live out in Pacific Douglas, an area in South Surrey very close to the border, if you have kids, you are going to be driving them back and forth quite a bit because there are no buses whatsoever in the Pacific Douglas area. And finally, parking. Parking has become very much of an issue over the years because housing is very expensive. And as a result, if you own a detached house, chances are you also have a basement suite, something that we call a mortgage helper, because most people simply can't afford to pay their mortgage if they don't have a tenant renting out their basement. And what happens then? That doubles the amount of cars in the neighborhood. And so we're finding that street parking is getting harder and harder. We're getting more and more vehicles out there, and it's harder to find a parking spot. And the other parking issue that we have that many people complain about is the cost of parking your vehicle pretty much anywhere in White Rock. South Surrey, they don't charge you for parking, but in White Rock, you do indeed have to pay for your parking, and it's quite expensive, especially if you want to go down to the beach for the day and park along the promenade. Now, thankfully, residents of White Rock, people that actually live in White Rock, can get a parking pass. And that parking pass is a nominal fee and it allows you to park for free. And the last con I'm going to share with you, a bonus if you will, is something that's relatively unique and new ever since COVID came about. And that is the advent of Porch Pirates. So what are Porch Pirates, you say? Well, you know, when people were staying home with COVID, they started to use online shopping more and more. And when their parcels were delivered to their doorstep, well, sadly, thieves would come along, grab their parcels, and run off. This became a bit of an issue, to say the least. So I do recommend, if you do order things to your home, make sure that you answer the door when they ring the doorbell, or check your email when they send you that email letting you know that the parcel has arrived, and grab it before the Porch Pirates do. Now, if you want to get back to these Porch Pirates, there is something that some people do that I've seen in the Facebook groups, which is rather comical to say the least. And what they'll do is they'll take an old Amazon box, they'll fill it up with dirty kitty litter, tape it up, and leave it on their porch overnight. Then the next morning, they sit back, turn on their TV, and watch their security camera as some thief walks up thinking he's won the jackpot, running off with a kitty litter. Okay, so there you have it. Those are the 7 worst things about living in South Surrey and White Rock, BC. If you're thinking about moving to this area, now you know not only the pros, but some of the cons as well. If you can put up with those cons, well, you're going to love living in South Surrey and White Rock, because it's an amazing area. It really is. If you have any questions about relocating out this way in regards to real estate, please feel free to reach out and connect with me. My number is 604-612-5164. We'll talk soon.